Poverty's sting didn't just scar me, it forged me into a predator craving power. I'm Alicia, haunted by early days in a Mexican village. Rain soaked my tattered schoolbooks. My escape from despair. My mother's weary hands chased leaks. Her face shamed. My father, broken, stared at scarred hands. Silent, schoolkids mocked my patched clothes. Sneering beggar, fueling rage. At 13, my aunt's cruel words, "She'll stay poor," trapped, ignited a vow I'd never be invisible. Every peso earned cleaning. Selling bracelets built my escape. At 18, I stood at the bus stop, suitcase worn, eyes defiant. My parents, torn by pride and fear, watched me leave for glory or ruin. New York's chaos horns. Skyscrapers called me. Power was my salvation, and I'd burn all to seize it. I never imagined that the bitter taste of poverty would fuel my entire life's obsession with power. The memories of those early years are burned vividly into my soul. It wasn't just the crushing poverty or the relentless struggle. It was the humiliation that still haunts me. I remember clearly the morning rain seeped through the cracks of our shabby roof, dripping coldly onto my worn schoolbooks, books I desperately protected because they symbolized my fragile hope for a different life. Far from the dirt roads of my tiny Mexican village, I watched helplessly as my mother scurried around the cramped house, her thin, tired hands placing rusted buckets beneath the leaks. Her face, prematurely aged by constant worry, wore an expression that made my chest ache, a combination of defeat and quiet shame. Beside the door, my father sat silently, his shoulders bent forward, his eyes fixed on his calloused hands. Scarred and cracked from endless work in the fields, he had nothing left to say, nothing left to offer. At school, it wasn't any easier. My classmates, dressed neatly in clothes that looked impossibly clean and new compared to mine, openly mocked my torn shoes and patched uniform. Their laughter stung worse than any physical pain, and their taunts echoed cruelly in my mind each evening. "Look at Alicia the village beggar." They'd whisper loud enough for me to hear, their eyes bright with contempt. Each sneer branded itself into my pride, igniting within me a simmering rage and fierce determination. Yet, nothing compared to the moment on my 13th birthday when I overheard my aunt whispering to my mother, her voice thick with disdain, "She'll end up just like you, Maria, poor, invisible, and trapped here forever." Those words sliced into me, sharper than any blade. I clenched my fists so hard my nails bit into my palms, drawing thin lines of blood. At that moment, I swore silently and bitterly that I would prove them all wrong. From that day forward, humiliation transformed into ruthless ambition. Every spare moment became a step toward escape, cleaning neighbors' homes, selling handmade bracelets, hoarding every peso I earned. I stopped feeling shame. Instead, I began feeling powerful, as if each small act of defiance was slowly loosening the chains that bound me to this village. When I finally stood at the village bus stop at 18, clutching a battered suitcase, the same aunt who once mocked me stood in her doorway, arms crossed, disbelief etched on her face. I met her eyes fiercely, defiant. My parents watched from afar, pride and fear mingling in their tired gazes. They knew I was different, dangerously ambitious, destined either for greatness or ruin. But they let me go anyway, knowing the village could never contain someone who refused to accept its limitations. As the bus door hissed shut behind me, I didn't look back. My gaze remained locked forward toward New York, toward a new life, toward a future I vowed to shape with my own hands. But as the wheels started rolling, I felt that familiar sting again, that bitterness that would forever fuel me. Poverty had scarred me deeply, humiliation had driven me forward, and power had become my only salvation. I still vividly remember the night I made the biggest decision of my life, the decision that would either lead me to glory or complete ruin. It was a stifling, restless evening, and our tiny, cramped room seemed even more suffocating under the heavy weight of despair that lingered in every breath. My parents had already fallen asleep, their weary, rhythmic breathing filling the silence of the night, but sleep was impossible for me. I lay awake, staring up at the ceiling where faint moonlight slipped through the cracks, creating pale, ghostly streaks above me. A haunting question echoed relentlessly in my mind. A nightmare that wouldn't let go if I stay here. What will my life become? I imagined myself trapped in that tiny kitchen, watching my hands slowly grow rough and scarred like my mother's, my face gradually becoming hollow and aged before my time. I pictured myself enduring the same condescending stares and pitying looks from the villagers, inevitably turning into another version of my mother, helpless, poor, and utterly invisible to society. The vision made me shudder deeply, a fear that cut through my heart like a blade. That very fear drove me out of bed. I rose abruptly, pushed open the flimsy wooden door, and stepped out into the yard. Standing beneath the vast, star-filled sky, I took a deep breath and silently promised myself, I will not let my life fall into that kind of hopelessness. I will leave this place, and I won't return until I've claimed everything I desire. The next day, I began meticulously crafting my escape plan. I listed every necessary step. I calculated that I needed at least 500 pesos, a sum that seemed almost unattainable for a girl as impoverished as I was. Yet nothing could discourage me. I took on extra cleaning jobs, sold handmade bracelets door to door, and carefully saved every small peso. Each coin I gathered brought me one step closer to New York. One afternoon, when my mother found the little box of hidden pesos tucked beneath my bed, she didn't say a word, but her eyes revealed everything. A heartbreaking mixture of sorrow and quiet hope. She knew I was preparing to leave, even though she never found the courage to ask me about it. Everyone in the village continued to dismiss me as a naive dreamer, someone doomed to fail, but I no longer cared about their judgments. Inside me burned an unshakable determination that nothing could extinguish. And then, faster than I ever imagined, the day finally arrived. I had just turned 18. Standing at the small bus station on the outskirts of our village with a battered suitcase in one hand and a one-way ticket to New York in the other. It was a journey without any turning back. But I was completely ready. As the first rays of dawn broke over the horizon, I climbed resolutely onto the bus without a moment of hesitation. I knew with certainty that this decision was more than just another choice. It was the turning point of my life, my undeniable destiny. The first time I stepped off the bus onto the bustling streets of New York City, I felt as if I'd landed on another planet entirely. The noise hit me first, car horns blaring relentlessly, crowds shouting, footsteps echoing off towering skyscrapers that seemed to scrape the clouds. Everything was immense, overwhelming, and completely unlike the quiet, dusty streets I'd left behind in Mexico. I clutched my battered suitcase tighter, my knuckles turning pale, and as anxiety surged through me, at 18, alone in a city capable of devouring dreams whole, I felt small and insignificant. Yet beneath my nervousness simmered an exhilarating sense of possibility. I knew without doubt this was exactly where I was meant to be. My first home was barely livable, an apartment crammed into a decrepit building in Queens, shared with 3 other young women chasing similar dreams. Peeling paint, leaky pipes, thin walls that shook whenever trains rumbled past. It hardly mattered. It was merely a stepping stone on my journey upward. My roommates barely acknowledged me, each absorbed in their own struggles, but friendship wasn't on my agenda. Survival and success were. Within days, I found myself at a small modeling agency I'd spotted in the classifieds. My heart pounded furiously as I walked into their cramped office. Dressed in my best outfit, a simple but meticulously handmade dress, meant to conceal poverty beneath a veil of confidence, the agent, a middle-aged man with tired eyes, studied me silently before speaking. "You have a strong look," he finally said, leaning back in his chair, voice heavy with skepticism. "But New York is brutal. It'll chew you up and spit you out if you're not careful." His bluntness ignited something inside me, anger and defiance. Not fear. I straightened my spine, meeting his gaze squarely. "I'm ready," I replied, my voice calm and unwavering, surprising even myself. Days later, I held my first modeling contract. Nothing glamorous, just a small gig at a minor fashion show. But holding that modest piece of paper felt like gripping a lifeline. a fragile yet undeniable confirmation I'd made the right choice. This wasn't wealth, nor fame. Yet it was tangible proof I belonged here. That paper was worth more to me than gold. That small fashion show was also where I first met Bianca Torres. She was young, strikingly beautiful, yet clearly out of place, lost among more seasoned models backstage. Her wide eyes darted anxiously, betraying her lack of confidence. After the show, as I gathered my belongings, Bianca approached me cautiously, admiration clear in her earnest, bright eyes. "You were amazing out there," she whispered. "I could never do that. This place terrifies me." I studied her briefly, her genuine innocence, the vulnerability she wore openly on her face. In that moment, Bianca reminded me of who I had once been, naive and hopeful, but sentimentality had no place in my life now. Still, perhaps someone like her could prove useful, someone who inspired sympathy and trust, things I'd abandoned long ago. New York terrifies everyone, I answered coolly, deliberately. You either learn to fight or you leave. Bianca nodded slowly, absorbing my words like they were precious truths. "Could you teach me?" she asked hesitantly, her hopeful smile softening her features. For a brief second, I considered refusing. Alliances were dangerous, friendships riskier still, but in Bianca's vulnerability, I saw an opportunity. "Maybe," I said finally, carefully measuring my words. "But remember this clearly. Trust no one, not even me." She laughed softly, mistaking my seriousness for humor. "Okay, I'll remember," she replied lightly. I didn't laugh. I wasn't joking. This city was ruthless, merciless in ways Bianca clearly couldn't yet comprehend. Friendships here were temporary alliances, easily broken when survival demanded it. Yet, something in Bianca's trusting gaze promised usefulness, perhaps even advantage. That night, lying awake in the cramped apartment with the distant hum of the city surrounding me, I replayed the agent's words. New York was brutal, a city that crushed dreams and discarded the weak. But I wouldn't allow myself to become another victim. Instead, I would master its cruelty, bending it to my will, climbing higher and higher no matter what or who I had to sacrifice along the way. In those first few months in New York, Bianca and I quickly grew closer, not exactly friends. I never truly believed in friendship, but we became close enough to lean on each other during the early days of struggle. Bianca was entirely different from me. She laughed easily, cried even more easily over small failures, and constantly shared her vulnerabilities. She often spoke about how homesick she was, about innocent dreams for the future, and her deep-seated anxiety before every casting call. I listened quietly, but rarely shared anything of myself in return. Instead, I silently observed her weaknesses, treating them as reminders of what I must never allow myself to become. One evening, after Bianca's third rejection in a row from a prestigious agency casting, she sat crying in our cramped apartment, her face streaked with tears. "Alicia, I can't do this anymore," she sobbed, her voice filled with despair. "Maybe I'm just not strong enough like you." I studied her for a long moment, saying nothing. I knew Bianca's emotional vulnerability and honesty would ultimately be her downfall in this unforgiving city. Instead of comforting her with meaningless words, I replied bluntly, "If you want to survive here, you must toughen up. This city doesn't care about your tears. You either learn to stand up and fight or keep sitting here crying about it." Bianca looked up at me, clearly hurt, but within that hurt was a trace of admiration. "I'll try to be more like you," she whispered. Yet, the longer I spent around Bianca, the clearer it became that she would never be like me. We were fundamentally different. Bianca was too emotional, too honest, while I had long ago mastered the art of controlling everything, especially my emotions. Our differences became painfully clear after I was chosen to walk in a prestigious fashion show for an upscale brand in Manhattan. That night, I shined on the runway, even receiving personal praise from the lead designer. After the show, I overheard whispers backstage among the other models. "Alicia is a real star. Bianca? She'll never be tough enough to survive here. I felt no pity or sadness for Bianca upon hearing this. It was simply the truth. While my career soared higher with each passing day, Bianca continued to stumble, facing rejection after rejection from the ruthless world of fashion. One night, I returned home to find Bianca sitting alone in the dark, waiting for me with eyes full of tension and envy. "You got chosen again?" she asked. Her voice edged with bitterness, meeting her gaze directly. I calmly replied, "Yes, they want someone who knows how to own the runway. If you keep wearing your emotions openly like that, they'll never choose you." Bianca bit her lip, her face reddening from a mixture of embarrassment and anger. It was the first time I saw clearly that cracks were beginning to form between us, tension that would undoubtedly lead to larger conflicts soon enough. But I didn't care. I had never promised Bianca that I would always be by her side. Nor had I ever intended to support anyone but myself. My only priority was reaching the pinnacle of the fashion world. That night, lying awake in the dark, I fully understood that the fragile bond between Bianca and myself wouldn't last long. To me, Bianca was just another pawn on the chessboard of power, a temporary alliance I wouldn't hesitate to discard if necessary. I had never believed in true friendship, especially not here, where emotions were a luxury and power and success were the only things that mattered. When Bianca first stepped onto the runway that night, I expected nothing remarkable. Just another desperate effort from a girl who had continuously failed to endure the fashion world's harsh realities. But as soon as she stepped beneath the dazzling lights, something unexpected happened. Bianca moved with a newfound grace and effortless elegance, captivating every gaze in the room. The subtle yet commanding confidence radiating from her was impossible to ignore. I stood backstage, utterly still, my fists clenched tightly at my sides. Industry veterans, who'd previously dismissed Bianca without a second thought, leaned forward in astonishment. Cameras flashed more rapidly. Photographers exchanged startled glances, and whispers buzzed audibly throughout the audience. The editor-in-chief of Vogue leaned toward her assistant, whispering excitedly, "Bianca Torres isn't just walking tonight. She's redefining runway elegance entirely." Those words sliced sharply through my composure. My heart pounded, a wave of unfamiliar anxiety surging momentarily. I forced myself to remain expressionless, though beneath my practiced calm, panic briefly fluttered an emotion I utterly despised. It was quickly subdued by cold determination. At the finale, applause erupted louder and longer than I'd ever heard for anyone else, including myself. Bianca stood modestly at center stage, her radiant smile warm, genuine qualities I'd never mastered, nor wished to. For the first time, envy twisted fiercely within me, tasting bitter and foreign. In the following days, Bianca's fame exploded overnight. Media outlets rushed to crown her the supermodel of the future, fashion's most authentic face, and the industry's brightest star. Magazines placed her face prominently on their covers. Agencies scrambled desperately for her signature, and designers who had once ignored her now clamored for her presence. Invitations to exclusive events stacked up on our shared kitchen table, each elegant card another thorn of jealousy lodged deeply in my pride. One afternoon backstage, I overheard whispers unmistakably aimed to wound me. "Alicia's good," a stylist murmured, unaware I stood mere steps away. "But Bianca's special. She has something Alicia never will, real authenticity." Those words burned like acid. Each compliment aimed at Bianca felt like a direct challenge, a ruthless threat to my carefully constructed empire. One evening, returning home from yet another draining photo shoot, I found Bianca nervously sitting on the couch, holding the latest issue of Vogue bearing her smiling face on the cover. She glanced up anxiously as I entered, clearly sensing the shifting dynamic between us. "I never expected this," Bianca murmured softly, hesitant yet hopeful. "I hope this won't change things between us." I paused briefly, absorbing the subtle tension that filled our tiny apartment. Her vulnerability was sincere, but beneath that innocent gaze, I now saw an unmistakable strength, one I could no longer underestimate or ignore. Carefully, I masked my feelings with practiced ease, and smiled calmly. Why would anything change? My voice remained steady, betraying none of the turmoil raging beneath my composed exterior. Bianca exhaled in relief, trusting completely my manufactured assurance. As she turned away, oblivious, my smile faded instantly, replaced by icy resolve. Yes, Bianca had risen brilliantly and rapidly, but I had clawed my way too painfully, sacrificed far too much to let her newfound success destroy my dominance. Bianca was no longer merely an ally. She had become my fiercest rival, a direct threat that had to be neutralized at any cost. I had always known how to handle threats, and Bianca was no exception. In the weeks following Bianca's explosive rise, our fragile relationship grew increasingly strained, transforming our once warm apartment into a place of silent tension. The casual conversations and shared laughter from our early days had vanished, replaced now by terse exchanges and uncomfortable silences. We still greeted each other each morning, still shared the occasional meal, but every interaction felt forced. Mechanical cold routines performed out of necessity rather than genuine affection. Meals we once enjoyed together now became quiet rituals. Each of us focused on our plates to avoid meeting the other's eyes. Even the smallest gestures now carried unspoken hostility. Outside our apartment, whispers grew louder, sharpening the invisible knives already poised between us. At every photo shoot, every casting, I heard faint murmurs. It seems Bianca is overshadowing Alicia now. Can you believe how quickly she's taken over? Each whisper stung deeper than I cared to admit, forcing me to confront an unfamiliar fear, a fear of irrelevance, of losing everything I'd fought so fiercely to achieve. Each night, as I stared at my reflection in the mirror, I saw cracks forming not only in our friendship, but also in my carefully maintained composure. Things worsened dramatically one afternoon at a prestigious casting call for a luxury fashion campaign. I arrived confidently, expecting the familiar attention I'd grown accustomed to, but as I entered the studio, all eyes shifted past me, their excitement directed elsewhere. I turned, feeling my chest tighten painfully, to see Bianca walking in glowing, confident, and warmly greeted by the head designer herself. "Bianca," the designer exclaimed joyously, "I'm thrilled you're here. Everyone's buzzing about you. You're exactly the fresh face we've been searching for." Standing unnoticed mere steps away, my pulse quickened with bitterness. Each enthusiastic word stabbed deeper into my pride. Bianca caught my eye briefly, her expression a guilty blend of apology and satisfaction. She knew exactly what was happening, and despite her apparent innocence, I sensed a quiet triumph beneath her hesitation. Later that evening, Bianca came home visibly ecstatic. She found me sitting quietly, pretending to read a magazine, and paused uncertainly before finally speaking. "Alicia?" She began softly, hesitant yet hopeful. "I got the campaign." I carefully closed the magazine, forcing a calm, indifferent expression even as jealousy churned violently inside me. "Congratulations," I replied coolly. "I suppose they found exactly what they wanted." She hesitated again, sensing the subtle venom beneath my words. "You're not upset, are you?" "Upset," I echoed calmly, meeting her gaze without flinching. "Why would I be the industry's unpredictable? Enjoy your moment while it lasts." Bianca's smile faded slightly, replaced by uncertainty. She clearly understood the hidden warning in my words, but chose not to push further, retreating silently to her room. But the tipping point, the crack that irreparably shattered the thin veneer of our friendship, came a week later at a high-profile charity gala. I'd arrived fashionably late, determined to reclaim attention. As I scanned the glittering crowd, my eyes settled on Bianca, beautiful, elegant, and confidently engaged in deep conversation with a man whose presence commanded respect and envy throughout the room. It was Christian Evans, the powerful and notoriously influential actor, known as much for his charm as his scandalous lifestyle. The realization hit me sharply. Bianca's smile was no longer the innocent, shy expression I knew. It was flirtatious, confident, openly seductive. Something inside me twisted fiercely at the sight. A toxic mixture of suspicion and jealousy that took me completely by surprise. Christian glanced up, noticing my arrival, His gaze lingering a moment longer than necessary. He smiled slowly, knowingly, clearly intrigued by both of us. Bianca turned, catching my eyes with a challenge I'd never seen from her before. It was a silent declaration of rivalry, a clear statement that the line had officially been crossed. That night, lying sleeplessly in bed, I accepted a harsh truth. Bianca had stepped fully out of the shadows, evolving from my harmless companion into my fiercest competitor. Not only professionally but personally, the man we both desired was powerful, influential, and capable of elevating either of us to unprecedented heights. But I also knew the danger of playing this particular game. I could no longer afford hesitation or weakness. Friendship was a luxury I never truly believed in, and Bianca had now become my greatest threat. It was no longer enough to merely outshine her. I would have to actively undermine her if I wanted to remain at the top. In that quiet darkness, my resolve hardened once again. Bianca Torres had officially become an obstacle, one that needed to be swiftly, decisively removed. The revelation at the charity gala changed everything. Christian Evans wasn't just a man, he was power personified, influential, scandalously wealthy, and irresistibly charming. He held the ability to make or break careers with a single word. Bianca's openly flirtatious interaction with him had shifted our rivalry from professional into something far more personal and dangerously volatile. In the days that followed, Bianca openly flaunted her relationship with Christian. Extravagant bouquets and expensive gifts regularly arrived at our shared apartment, deliberately left in conspicuous places. Each gift a silent taunt directed squarely at me. One afternoon, a massive bouquet of crimson roses arrived, along with a handwritten note from Christian. To the most radiant star I've ever met, Christian. Bianca carefully placed the note and flowers on our shared dining table, ensuring I saw every word. Each provocative gesture ignited jealousy within me, an emotion I'd always despised and meticulously hidden. But this was a game I knew well, and I refused to lose control. If Bianca intended to provoke me, she would soon learn the cost of challenging Alicia Fernandez. The media quickly seized upon our rivalry, turning the entire industry's attention toward our so-called love triangle. Tabloid headlines grew sensationalist, shouting things like, "Supermodel showdown, Alicia and Bianca battle for Christian Evans's heart." And "Can Bianca Torres finally dethrone Alicia Fernandez?" These headlines, relentless and cruel, further heightened our tension. Every event became a carefully staged battleground. Every glance, smile, or whispered conversation strategically calculated. At an exclusive industry party a week later, I saw my perfect opportunity. Bianca, now confident and comfortable in the spotlight, was absorbed in conversation with a group of admirers. Across the room, Christian stood alone, sipping champagne casually. He looked directly at me, a subtle invitation gleaming in his eyes. I took it immediately. I walked gracefully toward him, ensuring Bianca saw every step. "Christian," I greeted him warmly, allowing myself just enough charm to spark curiosity. "Enjoying yourself," he smiled, clearly intrigued by my sudden approach. "Much more now that you're here." "Alicia." Our conversation flowed effortlessly, charged with an undeniable chemistry. I was careful to keep the interaction subtle yet deliberate. Every laugh, every glance, was precisely timed to ignite Bianca's jealousy. I could feel her gaze burning across the room, and when I casually placed my hand lightly on Christian's arm, I knew she saw it. Her expression darkened visibly. When I turned to leave later that night, Christian gently grasped my wrist. His voice dropped into a quiet, intimate tone. "I would love to see you again, somewhere more private." Perhaps, I glanced sideways, just enough to ensure Bianca, who was now openly watching, heard every word. I smiled softly, knowingly. "I'd like that very much," I replied, deliberately loud enough for Bianca to overhear clearly. The confrontation back at the apartment was immediate and intense. "What the hell are you doing?" "Alicia," Bianca demanded sharply, eyes blazing with fury and betrayal. "This isn't some game. I genuinely care about Christian." I laughed softly, bitterly, the sound carefully controlled. "Then you truly are naive." "Bianca, Men like Christian Evans only care about one thing: power. You're fooling yourself if you think your feelings matter to him. Bianca's anger faltered briefly, replaced momentarily by uncertainty, but she quickly regained her resolve, her voice now hardened by determination. You're wrong. Christian sees something real in me, something genuine that you could never offer. Her words sliced deeper than I had anticipated, but I maintained my composure, hiding my emotions beneath practiced calm. We'll see, I responded evenly, holding her defiant stare. May the best woman win. That night, lying awake, I meticulously mapped out my next moves. Emotions were a liability I could not afford. Every action, every word spoken to Christian, had to be perfectly calculated. No room left for weakness. Bianca had crossed a boundary from mere rival to outright enemy, a threat that required swift and ruthless elimination. The media's relentless fascination with our rivalry played to my advantage. Every headline, every whispered rumor intensified the pressure on Bianca, testing the limits of her emotional fragility. And I intended to push those limits until she broke completely. Because if this was truly a war, as I now fully understood it to be, I intended to emerge victorious, unscathed, and utterly merciless. As the rivalry between Bianca and myself intensified, I quickly realized that direct confrontation alone wouldn't suffice. Bianca's star was ascending rapidly. Propelled upward by Christian's powerful influence, she had become the darling of the fashion industry, beloved by designers, photographers, and influential media figures. Challenging her openly now would only tarnish my carefully crafted image. I needed something quieter, colder, an invisible dagger that would slowly, methodically dismantle her reputation from within. I knew exactly where to strike. Gossip, rumors, when strategically wielded, were as deadly as poison. To retain my dominance, I would need to exploit the industry's relentless thirst for scandal. I began subtly, whispering carefully chosen words into precisely the right ears. At an influential charity luncheon, surrounded by fashion's elite, I approached Sophia Martin, the editor-in-chief of Vogue, with calculated concern. I murmured gently, Bianca's sudden fame seems overwhelming for her. I've noticed her lifestyle changing, more late nights, more champagne. It worries me. She's so young and vulnerable. Sophia listened closely, absorbing every subtle implication. Within days, online fashion columns discreetly began to question Bianca's lifestyle, posting veiled speculations. Is rising star Bianca Torres losing control? Sources report increasingly erratic behavior. The effect was immediate. Soon, Bianca began losing critical opportunities. Less than a week after the rumors emerged, Bianca was abruptly removed from the prestigious lineup of the upcoming major Fashion Week show. Her face, previously guaranteed on every significant billboard, was notably absent from the promotional materials. The industry's once unquestioning admiration for her rapidly turned into wary skepticism. Christian Evans's reaction was particularly telling. Observing carefully from the shadows, I noticed him subtly distancing himself from Bianca, his attendance at events with her sharply reduced. At a high-profile gallery opening, I watched him greet her coolly, with clear detachment. It was exactly as I had planned. Bianca was becoming a liability, and Christian would not risk his own reputation for a woman surrounded by controversy. At the next exclusive industry party, I carefully escalated things further. I approached Laura Fisher, the well-known gossip columnist whose words could make or break careers, leaning in confidentially. Off the record, I said, voice low with feigned reluctance. Bianca has changed dramatically since gaining fame. Honestly, it's heartbreaking to watch someone with so much promise throw it all away. And Laura's eyes sparkled with the thrill of juicy gossip. And by the next morning, a new, bold headline dominated the fashion tabloids. Party girl or supermodel Bianca Torres's fall from grace. The media frenzy intensified, and backstage whispers grew louder, more malicious. Bianca's composure visibly fractured under pressure. She began arriving late and unprepared for photo shoots. Increasingly anxious and irritable, each mistake she made confirmed the rumors I'd meticulously orchestrated. One evening, returning to our shared apartment, Bianca confronted me, trembling with barely suppressed fury. These rumors, this poison, you started it, didn't you, Alicia? I remained utterly composed, responding calmly, innocently. Why would I waste my time spreading gossip about you? Bianca, I've only ever warned you about how cruel this industry can be. She stepped closer, eyes blazing. Don't lie to me. You're deliberately sabotaging me. I smiled faintly, leaning in with icy calmness. If your position can collapse under a few rumors, perhaps you never deserved it in the first place, she faltered, her anger fading into shocked realization as she finally grasped the ruthless nature of the war she'd entered. Without another word, she turned and disappeared silently into her room, shoulders slumped in defeat, standing alone in the quiet darkness of our apartment. I allowed myself a brief, private moment of satisfaction. Watching Bianca's carefully constructed world crumble brought me a cold, undeniable pleasure. I felt no remorse, only the satisfaction of seeing my strategy unfold exactly as planned. The war between us had truly begun, and as its orchestrator, I intended to make sure Bianca's downfall was as swift, cold, and absolute as possible. I had expected Bianca to collapse quietly beneath the weight of scandal, anticipated her surrender and retreat into obscurity. But I severely underestimated the power of desperation. Bianca, though emotional and naive at times, now displayed a resilience I hadn't foreseen. Wounded and cornered, she was finally ready to strike back. At first, her response was subtle, careful. She began appearing publicly alongside Ethan Gray, the renowned fashion photographer known not only for his talent, but also for his vast influence and powerful connections. It was immediately clear what she was doing, forging a crucial alliance to counteract the rumors I'd carefully constructed. Ethan had the ear of every major designer, every influential editor, a powerful shield against my attacks. Their alliance quickly turned into a highly effective campaign. Ethan publicly declared Bianca to be his new muse, proudly showcasing her in captivating photo shoots and high-profile editorial spreads. Soon, fashion's most respected magazines prominently featured Bianca again, each photo carefully crafted to rebuild her image. At a prominent industry gala, Ethan openly defended her in front of influential guests. The recent rumors about Bianca are nothing but petty attempts by jealous rivals to tarnish a genuine talent, he announced decisively, his voice resonating through the room with authority and conviction. Within days, the media narrative shifted dramatically. Influential magazines and websites reversed their stance, publishing headlines like Bianca Torres vindicated victim of jealous sabotage. Ethan Gray defends supermodel Bianca, a comeback story. The sudden reversal caught me off guard. Designers and agents who had previously distanced themselves from Bianca now cautiously returned, eager to show support again. At fashion parties and events, Bianca appeared increasingly confident, fully aware of her regained strength. I watched in frustrated silence as Ethan expertly reintroduced Bianca to key industry figures. Each smile, each handshake she shared with those powerful individuals felt like a direct challenge aimed squarely at me. Then came Christian's reaction, swift and unmistakably chilling. Late one evening, after returning home from a draining photo shoot, my phone vibrated sharply. A short, curt message from Christian lit up the screen. "We need to talk. Tomorrow evening. I need answers." The cryptic nature of his words sent a cold ripple of uncertainty down my spine. Clearly, Bianca's counterattack had reached even Christian, causing him to doubt my narrative, perhaps even my integrity. For the first time in years, I felt a quiet, uneasy tremor of doubt. The next night, after a tense, probing conversation with Christian during which he openly questioned my involvement with the damaging rumors, I returned home drained. Stepping inside our apartment, I found Bianca waiting calmly, standing tall and confident. Her previous fragility had disappeared completely, replaced by a determined, even defiant, expression. "You underestimated me, Alicia," she began, voice cool and steady. "You assumed I'd fall apart quietly, but I'm stronger than you imagined." I lifted an eyebrow, maintaining my carefully controlled demeanor. "Enjoy your temporary victory. Bianca, Ethan Gray's protection won't last forever." People quickly tire of charity cases. Bianca smiled slightly, confidently. Ethan isn't charity, he's an ally, something you'll never truly have. Alicia, because you see people only as tools. I felt anger surge briefly, but kept my composure perfectly intact. Be careful. Bianca, allies in our industry can quickly become liabilities. She nodded slowly, meeting my eyes directly. Interesting choice of words. Given that Christian is already reconsidering who he should trust, he's beginning to question if he chose the right woman. My heart skipped involuntarily at her words. I held firm, refusing to betray even a flicker of emotion. Careful how far you push. Bianca, I warned coldly. You have no idea how ruthless I can truly be. Bianca's gaze never wavered. Her voice dropped lower, filled with newfound conviction. And you, Alicia, have no idea what I'm capable of when pushed too far. She turned away, disappearing quietly into her room, leaving the air thick with unresolved tension. Standing alone, I felt an unfamiliar crack forming within my carefully constructed facade, a subtle but undeniable feeling of vulnerability. Yet, beneath that vulnerability, something colder and sharper was rising, ruthless determination. Bianca had escalated our battle, openly challenging my dominance. But if she believed that aligning with Ethan Gray and casting doubt in Christian's mind would defeat me, she was gravely mistaken. She had forced me into a corner, but that was exactly where I performed best. Bianca had launched her counterattack. Now it was my turn to strike back even harder. The gloves were off, and the war between us had truly begun. Bianca's unexpected counterattack forced me to acknowledge a bitter reality. She was no longer the vulnerable opponent I had once dismissed. Her newfound confidence, reinforced by Ethan Gray's influential alliance, meant that every move from now on had to be calculated with extreme care. What began as a personal rivalry had now transformed into a public spectacle, gripping the entire fashion world in its dramatic intensity. Every event we attended was charged with palpable tension, eagerly anticipated by journalists and industry insiders, desperate for the slightest hint of conflict. Cameras flashed incessantly, and gossip columns flourished, reveling in our escalating war. The headlines grew more provocative with each passing day. Fashion's fiercest feud, Alicia Fernandez versus Bianca Torres, battle of the runway queens who will claim victory. Fully aware of this relentless scrutiny, I chose my next steps meticulously. Bianca had gained ground thanks to Ethan's protection, but she had yet to realize just how fragile her position remained. If Bianca craved the spotlight, I would ensure she was harshly exposed beneath its unforgiving glare. My next strategic move was simple yet devastating, planting subtle doubts about Ethan Gray himself. Through trusted contacts, I discreetly circulated carefully chosen rumors about Ethan's past, his notoriously volatile relationships with previous muses, highlighting his pattern of swiftly discarding them once he found someone new. The industry quickly took notice, and whispers soon spread discreetly yet effectively. Will Bianca Torres become Ethan Gray's next discarded muse? The effects were swift and ruthless. Within days, a major brand abruptly postponed Bianca's appearance in their upcoming high-profile advertising campaign. Their public explanation was deliberately vague, mentioning only a need to reevaluate brand alignment. But the message was painfully clear. Bianca's position was weakening once again. I closely observed Ethan's reaction, noticing immediately how disturbed he became. At a high-profile cocktail party, I strategically positioned myself near Ethan, casually swirling my champagne as I leaned toward him with a faint, knowing smile. Ethan, I spoke softly, ensuring only he heard. You know better than anyone how quickly loyalty fades in this business. One small rumor can change everything. Ethan's expression tightened visibly, clearly aware of my implications. Careful. Alicia? He responded sharply, eyes flashing with restrained anger. Your manipulations are becoming too transparent. I leaned closer, lowering my voice further. Think of this as friendly advice. Bianca might seem valuable now, but she could easily become your greatest liability. You have too much to lose. As I walked away, I felt Ethan's tense gaze linger on my back. Moments later, I noticed him deliberately avoiding Bianca's questioning glances throughout the evening. My strategy had worked perfectly. Ethan's trust in Bianca was already fraying at the edges, but my sense of triumph was short-lived. Later that evening, my phone vibrated sharply. A brief, chilling message from Christian Evans appeared on the screen. I sincerely hope the rumors about Ethan did not come from you. We'll discuss this soon. Christian's cryptic warning sent an unexpected wave of unease through me, reminding me how delicate my own position had become. His message was unmistakably clear. His trust was wavering dangerously. Returning home, Bianca was waiting for me, her posture rigid, eyes burning with barely contained fury. "What exactly did you say to Ethan tonight?" "Alicia," she demanded. Voice trembling, I feigned innocence effortlessly, responding calmly. "Nothing he didn't already suspect. Ethan knows how this industry works. Trust is a fragile commodity." She stepped closer, her voice hardening. "You can't sabotage me anymore without consequences. The harder you try, the clearer everyone sees your desperation." I smiled faintly, refusing to let her see how deeply Christian's message had shaken me. "It's not desperation. Bianca, it's survival. And unfortunately for you, I've been surviving far longer in this ruthless game." Her expression darkened further, filled with bitterness and frustration, before she abruptly turned and left without another word. The silence behind her thick with unresolved tension. Standing alone in the dimly lit room, I allowed myself a brief moment to acknowledge the faint tremors of uncertainty rippling through me. Bianca had indeed become more formidable, her attacks increasingly precise and damaging. But beneath my fleeting uncertainty, a darker resolve took root. If Bianca wished to remain in the spotlight, I would make certain it burned her. The war between us had escalated, its stakes higher than ever before. I was prepared to sacrifice everything if necessary to ensure my ultimate victory, systematically stripping Bianca of every ally, every shred of confidence she dared to reclaim. She had forced me into the harsh glare of public attention. Now she would discover just how merciless that spotlight could truly be. As Fashion Week loomed, the most pivotal event in our fiercely competitive world, I knew the moment had arrived to deliver my final, decisive strike against Bianca. She had rebounded stronger than expected, supported by Ethan Gray's alliance, and I refused to underestimate her again. This time, my plan had to be flawless, utterly ruthless, and undeniably effective. Step by calculated step, I executed my strategy. First came the rumors. With surgical precision, I circulated whispers through my network stories of Bianca struggling with a hidden prescription drug addiction. Fueled by the intense pressures of fame and public scrutiny, the impact was immediate. Hushed conversations quickly spread among fashion editors, designers, and insiders, casting dark shadows of doubt upon Bianca's reliability. Bianca Torres spiraling out of control, inside sources reveal troubling addiction. Headlines began appearing quietly but persistently across various gossip blogs and industry websites. But this time, damaging her reputation alone wasn't enough to truly neutralize her. I had to ensure Bianca would be physically unable to participate in Fashion Week. I discreetly arranged an unfortunate accident through a trusted operative known for handling sensitive assignments. On a stormy evening after a private fitting session, Bianca's car slipped smoothly off the wet road, just forcefully enough to cause genuine injury without endangering her life. The scenario was meticulously planned. Flawless in its believability, the incident sent shockwaves through the fashion community. Within hours, dramatic headlines exploded across major news outlets. Bianca Torres seriously injured in car accident Fashion Week, future uncertain. Supermodel Bianca hospitalized amidst shocking addiction rumors. From insiders, I soon heard that Bianca was utterly distraught, almost hysterical upon learning she'd been abruptly dropped from every runway show she'd worked tirelessly to secure. Reports from the hospital depicted her in tears, overwhelmed by frustration and despair, feeling powerless as her carefully rebuilt career once again shattered before her eyes. Industry reactions were swift and unforgiving. The influential editor-in-chief of a renowned fashion magazine bluntly told reporters, "It's unfortunate, But in this industry, scandals like this can end careers overnight. Bianca might never recover. Ethan Gray, once Bianca's most vocal supporter, conspicuously refused to comment, his silence deafening. I noted with satisfaction how quickly loyalty faded in our merciless world. Even Christian Evans, ever elusive yet observant, reached out to me with a cryptic message. I never imagined Bianca would let things get this far. Let's discuss soon. For a fleeting moment, I felt an uneasy twinge. Was Christian questioning Bianca, or subtly warning me, regardless? It was clear Bianca's carefully constructed support was unraveling quickly, yet, just as I began to feel comfortably triumphant, my phone vibrated urgently. A trusted informant sent a chilling message. Bianca survived and knows exactly who's behind this. She's planning a major reveal at Christian Evans's private event. Be careful. A cold wave of unease swept through me. Bianca was wounded but not broken, far from defeated. If she was preparing a counterattack, I had to act immediately. There was no room for hesitation. Calmly, I dialed Christian's number. When he answered, I carefully modulated my voice to sound both concerned and authoritative. Christian, it's Alicia. There's something urgent you must know about Bianca. Could we meet privately before your party? It's essential you hear this directly from me. A brief pause. Then Christian replied cautiously, All right. Alicia, let's talk. Ending the call, I felt my composure returning. Bianca had forced my hand, but she had yet to grasp just how ruthless I could become when pushed. If she dared to challenge me publicly, she would discover the consequences firsthand. She believed she could expose me, could humiliate me before the world. But Bianca had overlooked one fundamental truth: I had mastered this game long before she ever stepped onto the playing field. Now that she'd escalated our battle into open war, I would ensure she paid the ultimate price for her defiance. Christian Evans's exclusive party was the most anticipated social event of the season, filled with Hollywood royalty, influential editors, top designers, and elite industry insiders. Tonight, however, the glamorous setting had become a battlefield, where Bianca's desperate revenge and my strategic counterattack would play out in full public view. Stepping into the luxurious penthouse, I projected confidence and poise, perfectly masking the heightened alertness simmering beneath my composed exterior. The room buzzed with excitement, whispers mingling with the clink of champagne glasses. Cameras flashed subtly, capturing every subtle glance and interaction. Amid the dazzling crowd, I quickly identified Christian tense, guarded, yet maintaining his signature charisma. I approached him discreetly, offering a gentle, concerned smile. Christian, I murmured softly, leaning close. Bianca's planning something tonight. I don't want her drama ruining your event. Christian's eyes narrowed cautiously. Exactly what is she planning? Alicia? I don't have all the details yet. I lied smoothly, my voice convincingly troubled. But I fear she intends to publicly humiliate me and possibly drag your reputation down as collateral damage. He considered carefully, nodding with a heavy sigh. I'll handle things discreetly, he assured me, placing a reassuring hand lightly on my arm. With Christian's cooperation secured, I mingled gracefully, alert to every subtle movement in the room. Bianca was here, her presence unmistakably tense, eyes flashing defiantly whenever our glances briefly met. Ethan Gray stood beside her, his posture rigid and tense, clearly uncomfortable, clearly aware of the tension thickening the atmosphere. As I sipped champagne, my phone buzzed urgently with a text from a trusted contact. Bianca's people alerted key reporters. Expect her move soon. My heartbeat quickened, adrenaline sharpening my focus. Bianca's public confrontation was imminent. Glancing discreetly around, I noticed journalists subtly positioning themselves, eagerly anticipating the explosive moment. Suddenly, Bianca stepped purposefully to the room's center, raising her voice clearly, drawing immediate silence and attention. Everyone, she began, her tone sharp and emotional. You deserve the truth about Alicia Fernandez, the rumors about me, my car accident. She orchestrated it all. The room erupted in hushed gasps, every eye instantly pivoting toward me. Reporters hurriedly took notes. Cameras clicking, Bianca continued passionately. Emboldened by the spotlight, she has lied and manipulated everyone, attempting to destroy my reputation and career. I steadied my breathing, calmly preparing to execute my counter-strategy. But before I could respond, Christian stepped decisively into the center, smoothly capturing the attention of the crowd. "Bianca," he stated firmly, "this is neither the time nor place for your personal vendettas. Your outburst is inappropriate." Bianca's expression faltered, disbelief and shock evident on her face. "Christian, please listen." He raised a hand sharply, cutting her off. "No more. Your recent behavior, especially tonight, demonstrates precisely why people have questioned your reliability and stability." Bianca turned desperately toward Ethan Gray, eyes pleading for support. Ethan, however, remained distant and silent, visibly conflicted, but unwilling to associate himself with the scandal Bianca had ignited. I observed Ethan closely, noticing the subtle tightening of his jaw, his knuckles whitening as he gripped his champagne flute, a clear signal of his inner anger and disappointment. Around us, the room was alive with murmurs. I overheard a famous actress whisper to her companion, disappointment evident in her voice. I never imagined Bianca could stoop this low. Seizing the moment, Christian addressed the gathering confidently, authoritative and calm. "Bianca clearly needs professional help." Not Bianca's humiliating collapse at Christian Evans's party quickly dominated headlines and social media, forever immortalized in an image capturing her tearful, desperate outburst. Her accusations against me were instantly reduced to the incoherent ramblings of someone who'd lost all credibility and composure. But my victory was not yet complete. It wasn't enough just to see her defeated. I needed to ensure that Bianca would never rise again. The very next morning, I unleashed the second phase of my meticulously planned campaign, the final, reputation-shattering blow. Through discreet and carefully selected channels, I leaked previously hidden secrets about Bianca's private life, grainy footage from a drunken Ibiza party she once thought forgotten, anonymous confessions from a former assistant revealing explosive temper tantrums, and most damagingly, leaked documents implying a secret rehab stint in Switzerland. The media didn't hesitate. They devoured every revelation, unconcerned about verifying the details, eager to participate in Bianca's spectacular downfall. Bianca Torres's dark secrets unveiled the hidden life of a supermodel. Exclusive documents exposed Bianca's secret rehab stay. From icon to disaster, how Bianca lost it all. The press campaign proved devastating. Ethan Gray, who once championed Bianca as his muse, responded with an emotionless public statement. "I sincerely hope Bianca finds the peace and recovery she clearly needs." His brief, detached words were more damning than any explicit accusation. Major fashion brands immediately severed their ties, canceling contracts and removing her from upcoming campaigns. Bianca Torres was rapidly erased from the world of fashion she had once dominated. Yet, it was Christian Evans who delivered the final decisive strike. In a carefully managed private press briefing, he expressed contrived concern, announcing that Bianca had voluntarily withdrawn from public life to focus on her mental health. But behind this compassionate facade lay a harsher reality. Christian had arranged for Bianca's recovery at an isolated private island retreat. Away from media scrutiny and public view, it was exile disguised as compassion. On the evening before her departure, I saw Bianca one final time. She stood silently, alone on a rooftop balcony, gazing vacantly toward the distant skyline. In her eyes, there was no anger, no defiance, only silent, hopeless resignation. Our eyes briefly met, a quiet acknowledgement passing between us without words. Then she turned away, disappearing from view. No one saw Bianca again after that. Her social media profiles vanished overnight. Her management offered no comments. Soon, the public moved on, forgetting the once powerful woman who had dared challenge my supremacy. Bianca Torres became nothing more than a cautionary tale, a distant memory within the ruthless world of fashion. Meanwhile, my star rose higher than ever before. New offers poured in daily. Prestigious brands eagerly pursued partnerships. The fashion world hailed me as the epitome of resilience and professionalism. During a high-profile magazine interview weeks later, the journalist cautiously mentioned Bianca's name. With a carefully measured smile, I replied calmly, "I sincerely hope Bianca finds peace. This industry can be brutally unforgiving. Not everyone is suited for it." Inside, however, there was no sympathy, no remorse, only cold emptiness. Bianca had underestimated me, believing truth or sentiment could save her. But she was wrong. In the ruthless game of power, truth means nothing. Only victory matters. And standing alone atop the mountain of my triumph, I knew I was victorious. If anyone else ever dared challenge me again, I would not hesitate to repeat what I'd done to Bianca. Only next time, I'd move faster, strike harder, and be even more merciless. In the aftermath of Bianca's dramatic fall, I stood unchallenged at the pinnacle of the fashion world. My name had become synonymous with power, elegance, and ruthless determination. Editors scrambled to seek my approval before releasing their stories. Top designers vied fiercely to have their creations worn exclusively by me. Every industry event now revolved around my schedule, my presence becoming the benchmark of prestige. Yet, as I stood alone one quiet evening in my luxurious penthouse, gazing out over the glittering lights of New York City, I felt an unexpected sense of emptiness. My phone buzzed incessantly, a barrage of notifications, invitations, new contracts, all reminders of my unrivaled dominance. Among them was a message from a prominent fashion journalist who had recently described me publicly as Alicia Fernandez, equally admired and feared. I smiled faintly at the screen. The assessment wasn't wrong. Christian Evans, Ethan Gray, names that had once closely aligned with mine, were now subtly maintaining their distance. They were cautious, wary even, recognizing that to stand too close to absolute power was dangerous. The solitude I felt wasn't accidental. It was a carefully accepted consequence of being untouchable. Taking a sip from the crystal wine glass in my hand, I briefly allowed my thoughts to drift back past the glittering lights, past the lavish penthouse, all the way back to that small, cramped house in the dusty village of my childhood in Mexico. That poverty-stricken memory was fleeting yet powerful, a stark contrast reminding me why I had fought relentlessly, why compromise had never been an option. Bianca had forgotten this critical truth in a world as ruthless as ours. Emotional weakness was fatal. She allowed sentiment and impulsiveness to guide her, mistaking passion for strength. Her downfall wasn't merely predictable, it had been inevitable. I had simply been the one to deliver the final blow. I felt no guilt, no remorse, only an overwhelming sense of clarity. Bianca had made the mistake of believing in fairness, in emotional bonds, but the fashion industry didn't respect fairness. It respected power, and power demanded sacrifices. Bianca had paid that price because she failed to understand that essential lesson. Tomorrow's issue of Vogue would feature my image prominently on its cover, emblazoned with a single, potent headline, Alicia Fernandez, fashion's indomitable queen. Mop. I set down my glass, my reflection clear in the large window before me. A queen. Yes, cold, distant, isolated. But isolation was a small price for supremacy. If loneliness was the inevitable cost of unchallenged dominance, I was more than willing to pay it. And if another Bianca ever dared to appear, attempting to reach the heights I had secured, I wouldn't hesitate, not even for a moment, to repeat everything I had done. Faster, cleaner, and infinitely more ruthless. Weeks turned into months, and with each passing day, my influence over the fashion world only intensified. I stood alone at the summit, the sole reigning queen of an empire I had built through ruthless strategy and unyielding ambition. Every front page, every billboard, every industry award ceremony was graced with my image, an undeniable symbol of absolute power. I relished each moment. Walking into an exclusive gala hosted by Christian Evans, I felt the collective gaze of the crowd follow me, a mixture of admiration, envy, and genuine respect reflected clearly in their eyes. Editors, designers, celebrities, all subtly vied for my attention, hoping a single approving glance from me could elevate their status. It was exactly what I had always desired: unquestioned authority, absolute recognition, and a palpable sense of fear-driven respect. Midway through the evening, Ethan Gray approached cautiously, his demeanor respectful yet wary. He paused briefly before speaking, choosing his words with deliberate care. "Alicia," he began, voice calm but tinged with caution. "Your achievements lately are remarkable. I must admit, you've truly proven yourself unstoppable." I smiled faintly, meeting his careful gaze directly. "It's simple, Ethan," I replied evenly. "In our world, either you control power, or it controls you. I chose control." He nodded slowly, understanding perfectly the subtle reference to Bianca's fate. Ethan didn't linger long, slipping back into the crowd, a clear indication of his respectful fear, exactly as it should be. As the evening progressed, I took a quiet moment alone, stepping onto a private terrace overlooking the glittering skyline of Manhattan. The city lay sprawled beneath me, vibrant and alive, yet distant and untouchable from my elevated perch. Standing there, the cool night breeze caressing my skin, I felt an intense satisfaction, pure, unapologetic pride at having reached a height few could even dream of attaining. My thoughts briefly drifted to Bianca, the woman who had foolishly thought she could challenge my supremacy. Her absence did not trouble me in the slightest. I had done what was necessary. No hesitation, no remorse, and absolutely no regrets. In the unforgiving game of dominance and prestige, compassion was merely weakness disguised as virtue. Bianca had failed because she chose sentiment over strategy, emotion over calculation. Her downfall had been inevitable from the very beginning. Reflecting calmly on all I'd done, I felt no trace of guilt. I had no reason to apologize, nothing to regret. Each calculated decision, each ruthless maneuver, had served a purpose to place me exactly where I stood now, at the apex of unquestioned power. Returning to the glittering warmth of the gala, I caught Christian Evans's gaze across the room. He nodded respectfully, raising his glass in silent acknowledgement of my absolute triumph. I returned the gesture subtly, feeling a quiet thrill of satisfaction ripple through me. I had achieved everything I had set out to accomplish: dominance, respect, and power. And as I moved confidently through the admiring crowd, I knew I would do it all again without hesitation if anyone dared threaten my position. After all, in this brutal, magnificent world, victory was the only real truth, the only principle worth embracing. As time passed, my dominance in the fashion world only solidified further. Now, every step I took was carefully watched. Every word I spoke became a benchmark for anyone hoping to survive in this ruthless industry. From my perch atop the fashion elite, one cold yet undeniable truth became crystal clear: this world worshipped only the victorious. On a quiet morning in my luxurious apartment, I casually flipped through the latest articles about myself. Glowing headlines leaped off the pages. Icon of power, the unbeatable queen, the woman everyone respects and fears. A subtle smile curved my lips as I felt a deep, satisfying sense of pride ripple through me. I had wagered my entire life for this precise feeling. The unquestioned admiration mingled with absolute fear from all those around me. Bianca's downfall was merely the natural consequence of her inability to navigate this unforgiving world. I had felt no guilt destroying her. Not once had I hesitated. Not once had I questioned myself. If I could turn back time, I would do it all again, perhaps even more swiftly, more ruthlessly. My phone buzzed quietly. A message from Christian Evans appeared on the screen. "Alicia, a few new faces are emerging. They think they can take your place, but I'm guessing you're already prepared." I smiled coldly, confidence surging within me. His message didn't surprise me. In fact, it energized me. There would always be someone daring enough to challenge, ambitious enough to dream of dethroning me. Yet, the outcome would never change. I would always be the victor. Calmly, I replied to Christian's message, "Let them come. I'm always ready." Standing up, I moved toward the expansive window. The morning sun poured in, making the city beneath me sparkle brilliantly. I took a deep breath, savoring the exhilarating taste of absolute pride and satisfaction. These battles would never cease, and I welcomed them eagerly after all. It was power, competition, and victory that fueled me. They were the truths I had dedicated my life to pursuing. Tomorrow, or perhaps the day after, another Bianca would undoubtedly appear, but I didn't care. Anyone daring enough to challenge me would meet the same fate. This world only rewarded those strong enough, cold enough, and calculated enough to fight relentlessly. I gazed proudly at my reflection in the window glass, knowing exactly who I was and exactly what I'd done to get here. I sought no forgiveness, no compassion, and no sympathy, because to me, victory was the only absolute truth, and I was prepared to pay whatever price necessary to ensure that truth remained mine forever. Standing alone in the dim glow of my luxurious apartment, I gazed down at the glittering lights of New York City. From this towering height, the glamorous city seemed strangely small, its brilliance muted, as if bowing humbly beneath my gaze. The fashion world I had once yearned for, suffered for, and ultimately conquered, now lay obediently within my grasp. Slowly, I moved toward my desk, glancing over a collection of carefully framed articles and photographs chronicling my relentless ascent. Among them was an old photo. A young girl from a poor, obscure village in Mexico, eyes blazing with raw ambition and defiance. She had known hardship, tasted weakness, and survived pain, but she had never given up, guiding me every step of the way to this moment of absolute power. I smiled softly, feeling a profound sense of satisfaction. Bianca, and every other challenger I had ever faced, were merely obstacles on my path to supremacy. I had never regretted a single choice I'd made, not one rival eliminated, not one carefully planted scandal, not one ruthless decision. Each had been necessary, because in my world, victory was the only truth that mattered. My phone buzzed again, illuminating the darkness of the room with a message from Christian. Alicia, tomorrow you'll face new challengers again. Don't you ever grow tired of this endless fight? I stared at his question thoughtfully for a moment before calmly typing my reply. Never. This game is what makes me who I am. I accept everything it brings. It was the honest truth, one understood only by those who had stood unchallenged at the pinnacle of power. The price of victory was the bitter solitude, the wary looks of admiration mixed with fear, the inability to fully trust another soul, but I willingly paid it, without hesitation, because this was what absolute power demanded. Turning back to the expansive window, I caught my reflection in the glass, my eyes cold, sharp, unwavering. The city below glittered, beautiful yet distant, a perfect mirror of the world I'd created. Magnificent, ruthless, and ultimately lonely. One day, others would inevitably rise, hoping to overthrow me, but that didn't matter. I'd always be ready, sharper and more ruthless than before. Closing my eyes briefly, I embraced the silence. In this moment, I reaffirmed the simple, brutal truth that had driven me all these years in this world. Compassion and weakness are never forgiven. Victory, absolute victory, was the only ideal worth pursuing. Opening my eyes again, I allowed a cold, confident smile to curve my lips. A smile belonging to someone who had mastered the game entirely. No regrets, no mercy, no retreat. Because in this ruthless battle for power, I was and would always remain the victor. Thank you all for watching this video. Please comment and let me know what you think about this story. Please like and subscribe to watch more great content on my channel.